Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe. I like to post about books and music, mostly Taylor Swift. I feel like this song lyric perfectly encapsulates my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a reading wrap up for the months of July and August. I'm combining them into one. I kind of forgot why I didn't do an August wrap up. Anyways, if you are here because of the title / thumbnail of this video, I do have timestamps down in the description if you want to just skip to the part where I talk about Purple Hearts, because I know that one is on everyone's minds right now. So if you're here just for that, go ahead, go find out whether the book is just as bad as the film. And let's just get into all of the books I read in the last 2 months. So this is my end of summer wrap up. Fall time is here. My reading habits don't really change that much during the seasons, but I definitely saved like the Summer I Turned Pretty series for the summertime. I might finally get to like Midnight Sun and Life and Death during the fall time, because I feel like that's the best time to read the Twilight series, but I don't really do TBR videos because I never stick to them, so those are just some rough estimates. Okay, so the last book I talked to you guys about was My Policeman. I'm gonna warn you now, I did start making huge leaps and bounds towards finishing the Warrior Cat series that I committed myself to like a year ago, that I've had to take like 3 breaks from because it's just probably the longest series I'll ever read in my life. It's kind of fun, but I just don't see any of them being as good as the first 6 books. I feel like it could have stopped there, but I don't know. There's such a huge following. These books have such high ratings, so God, I read so much. Okay, so first I read, so this was a book that was sent to me. The Writers of the Future 38th volume. This was sent to me as like a sponsored book. They paid me to promote it. This video is not sponsored though. I already talked about my thoughts on this. I rated it 4 stars. It's basically a compilation of a bunch of new emerging science fiction and fantasy writers. They all submit their work to this contest. There's some stories that have an element to horror to them, which I find I like a little bit more than the other kinds of genres in fantasy and sci-fi. Like if it's a little spooky and mysterious, I tend to gravitate towards stuff like that. But as I said, I read a lot of books in the last 2 months, so I'm not going to talk about any of them too much. And then I suddenly remembered a book from my childhood, because I believe the illustrators of that book are featured in here. I think they drew one of the illustrations, because this book also has illustrations in it, and I remembered their names and the book that was their most successful one, and I remembered reading it as a child, so I wanted to reread that, even though it's literally just a children's book that's kind of like a fable. It's got like a moral to the story. It's very short. It was mostly just the illustrations that I was looking through it for. That book is Why Mosquitos Buzz in People's Ears. Does anybody remember this? I forgot about it completely until I picked this book up. I rated that one 4 stars. It was not as good as I remember it, because honestly, when I pick up books I read when I was like 3 or 4, sometimes I'm like, wow, this is just hitting. Like 3-year-old me had impeccable taste. The illustrations are just the best. I mean, I really do like those illustrators. The story was like, okay, it's basically the kind of theme following when children ask a question like, why does this happen? And you have to come up with an answer. Okay, so next I read a couple more of the Warriors Super Editions. Tigerheart's Shadow, which I rated 2 out of 5 stars. This is a super edition, so it's one of the ones that are like 500 pages long, and I feel like they drag a lot of it out, but I have since gotten through all of those super editions. I wrote, this was borderline intolerable. I don't even remember reading this. Thank God I take notes. So the main character has a huge superiority complex about like the way he lives is the only way to live, and he tries to enforce that on other people, just not having an open mind at all about people from different walks of life. People, these are about cats, but they're like personified. I feel like there could have been a lot of interesting things to explore in this book, because this cat meets other cats who live differently from him, and we'd never seen anything like that in this series, and I feel like it would have been cool to explore that dynamic, but they just didn't. It was mostly like toxic relationship struggles involved. I don't think this was super necessary. Then I read Crowfeather's Trial, which is another super edition, 500-page one. I rated it 3 out of 5. It was okay. They had an issue with stoats, which I didn't even know what kind of animal that was, so it was cool to see that the writers of this series were doing something different for once. A lot of the time they lean into the same tropes and the same kind of plot lines, because I feel like there's only so much you can do, but this was something new, so that's why it's 3 and not like 2. And then I read the Summer I Turned Pretty series. I'm not gonna pull them out, but they're right here. I just don't want to have to shove them back in. I'm also trying to make these stacks like taller, so I guess you guys are gonna have to get used to that. I have a reading vlog up on them, so I'm probably not gonna talk too much about them, but I rated the first one 4 stars. It was very fun and enjoyable and atmospheric, and even the second one was 4 stars, but maybe more like 3.5. And then the third one was 3 stars because the characters just got a little bit too unreasonable for my tastes, and I wasn't expecting them to, because the characters start off in the first book as like teenagers. Like the main girl is 15, and by the end of the third book she is my age. so I was expecting her to become more relatable as the books went on and she got older, but she actually became less so, because when she was 15, all of the things that were happening in the book at that point were very relatable to me. I could relate to how I was when I was 15, but by the time she was 23, I was like, I just don't feel any connection to this girl. She's like nuts. She's doing things I would never think I should do. It was crazy. It was a wild ride, but I really did enjoy this series because it is so atmospheric and just a perfect summer read. And then I read a few more of the Warrior Super editions. I jump around so much, you guys. I read Squirrelflight's Hope. I rated it 3 out of 5. This focused on what I thought was a fan favorite couple, Star and Squirrelflight, but they seemed incredibly toxic in this one, and a lot of people do call them out for being very toxic, and I don't know if I was just blind in the previous books and I'm only just now realizing, but a lot of people had problems with that one. And then I read Graystripe's Vow, 3 out of 5. This has a main character from the first 6 books way late in his life, and it just makes me emotional. I like that this book gave this main character a purpose as an older cat though, because typically older cats just kind of sit in the camp and let the other cats do everything for them, but Graystripe actually had a purpose, and it was like he had autonomy over his story even though he's later in life. Also, oh my god, I remember this one was told in alternating chapters between then and now, and it was a tad confusing, but I also kind of liked the format because that had never been done before. Then I read Leopardstar's Honor. This is about the leader of one of the clans, River Clan. 3 out of 5. It was really well paced and intense. This one took place from a different perspective from my favorite arc, which is the first 6 books, and it includes my favorite villain of the series, the only like really good villain in this series in my opinion, and how a cat who didn't always view him as evil saw him. And it was a pretty interesting perspective. Also really shows how someone can manipulate you over time. Like Leopardstar, the main character, is the definition of like a frog placed in water that slowly starts to boil over time and the frog doesn't realize it. And then I read Purple Hearts. Okay, so the movie was really freaking rough. I'm gonna be honest with you. I agree with most of the opinions that I've seen on this movie online. The racism that's just thrown in there and not really addressed, there's no character development to fix this mindset, and it's kind of just, I don't think America is the place to show like 2 ends of a political spectrum where one is like kind of a moderate stance in the rest of the world and the other is like very far right that other countries see as like insane, and you try to have them find a common ground when like one is already, how do I even put this into words? I don't know if I even want to try to explain this too much, but basically it just feels kind of disgusting to, you know, show one person who's like, I feel like I should be able to afford insulin, and I don't want people to be racist towards my mother who immigrated here from Cuba, I think it was, or Puerto Rico, and the other one is like, I believe we should be able to shout racist things in the middle of restaurants. I just don't see the balance. The book is better, but it's not perfect. I rated it 3 out of 5. The book itself though was pretty okay. I read the book before I watched the movie because that's a rule I like to have for myself. It didn't make me feel much, but there was much better dialogue in the book. It was not nearly as cringy as the movie. They did not put a single piece of the good dialogue from the book into the movie. There was like funny stuff in there. Like the main premise of this book is this girl who's like left-leaning meets this guy who's like a conservative, definitely voted for Donald Trump, and he's going into the military, and she recently finds out that she has diabetes and she needs to get health insurance. So it's a marriage of convenience, like fake dating type of thing, because they have to convince other people that this marriage is real. In the book, she actually has a boyfriend, and in the movie she does not. Like in the movie it's very much she's single and there is no like problem there with having another relationship, but in the book it adds another layer of complexity because she actually does have a different relationship. It's more of a slow burn because of that, I guess, but it's also just like kind of intolerable because he's just an awful person, and it's horrible to see her let go of her morals so quickly for this guy that's like a dime a dozen, if I'm being honest with you, but she has to do it for her health insurance. And I think that was the best part of the book and the movie, was it showed healthcare in the US accurately. It's a disaster. But yeah, they left some of the best dialogue out. Her best friend at one point says to her, all you do is write songs and defraud the military, I think it was. And I was like, that's such a cool, fun, snappy quote. And they didn't use it in the movie. They didn't use any of the good stuff from the book. And also the ending is completely different, and I feel like a lot more people will be more satisfied with the ending. I didn't care either way because I just do not give a shit what happens to her stupid husband. But if you didn't like the ending in the movie, you might be a little more satisfied with the book. The book also has a way more realistic ending, considering it is not illegal to marry someone for for health insurance. Marriages have been arranged for a very long time. How do you measure the legitimacy of it if you're both committing to, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense to me, but I've heard people in the military say this isn't even illegal. So it's already founded on something that's like not even something they would have to hide. The whole thing is just outlandish. It's a whole like fantasy, but it's also like a nightmare, because the idea of having to marry a man like that just so you can afford to live, it really is a nightmare. I like the plot and the writing, but it was just kind of boring. I didn't feel anything. It was okay, 3 out of 5. Then I read Migrants. My mom's friend, who is also from Ukraine, she's a librarian, and she was like, Nicole, you have to read this book. Like, it's deep. I need you to ponder over this. And it's basically a wordless picture book showing a group of animals personified wearing clothing, walking on hind legs, and they are immigrating because their land is like lifeless and barren and is not providing for them anymore. They have children. Some of the animals have a child that is a completely different species. Beautiful illustrations, lots of death and symbolism in it. You have to like look at all of the bits to the picture. I think it's maybe a little bit too dark and incomprehensible for some younger kids, but I think definitely for like 10-year-olds, I think this could be something that really helps them grasp the concept of immigrating and why people do it, and in turn make them understand what it's like to have to flee for a better life and maybe be more empathetic towards people, because I feel like immigrants get a lot of shit in this country when like the entire country was built on the backs of immigrants. Yeah, it was 4 out of 5. And then I read A Refugee's Journey from Ukraine. This was a horrible book. 0 stars. It was packed full of propaganda. I almost said propagander because I have to say that on TikTok or else I get banned. But YouTube's pretty reasonable about this stuff. It has tons of freaking Putin propaganda in it. I swear to God. It's not accurate. Do not read this book. I picked it up because I thought it would be an interesting book to recommend for people who have children who maybe want to know more about what is going on, but it's just not accurate. It's really unfortunate because it has a bunch of fun, colorful graphics and pictures and things that are pretty good for helping a kid understand something, and the language is really easy for a kid to understand, but it literally just has lies in it. So 0. I rated it 1 on Goodreads because you can't do 0 stars on Goodreads. And then this is gonna sound really ironic considering my last review, but then I read I See the Sun in Russia because I'm trying to practice my Russian because my family is Russian speaking Ukrainians. I've never been exposed to Ukrainian like at all. My family very much speaks Russian. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation, but I'm trying to improve it just so I can talk to them. And so I read this children's book. It has illustrations, but it also has the story told in English, and then underneath it, it has the story told in Russian, like a translation. So I just read through this to kind of improve. I was having my mom listen to my pronunciations as I was reading it out loud to her, and we were laughing. She goes, "There is no sun in Russia." But you know, it was helpful. The back of the book has like a bit more explanation on Russia, like maybe for the parents or something. It kind of talks about their insane pride for their World War II success against Germany. Oh my God, I wrote down, it stresses such a cultural richness of Russia minus the colonialism/complacency of the people despite their government's many invasions of sovereign smaller countries. I rated it 3 out of 5. I liked the eccentric illustrations. The illustrations look pretty cool. It was just like a cozy little story taking place in winter in a place I never want to have to think about ever again. But you know, I practiced my language. And then my mom also told me to read Vasilisa the Beautiful. This is a Russian fairy tale. It's Baba Yaga, if anyone's familiar with that. I was always told about that fairy tale growing up. But this is like a modernized version. It's Baba Yaga meets Cinderella. I don't know, I wasn't too big of a fan. It felt like a mix of a bunch of other fairy tales, predictable, not enough Baba Yaga. It also kind of made me think of Hansel and Gretel. 3 out of 5 stars. And then I read a bunch of the Warriors manga because if I'm being honest with you, I need to bulk up my reading number because I plan to read 100 books this year, and I kind of stopped when the war started because I was mentally not myself. So I read a bunch of Warriors manga. These are fun and these are cute and they're fast and easy to get through. So I read The Lost Warrior. Oh, this one was about Graystripe, which was the beloved character from earlier. It was part of the original 6 books, but this was before he got old. He gets like kidnapped by humans, basically. I rated it 4 out of 5. It was really cute and a fast read. I liked seeing what actually happened to him when he was kidnapped because in the main series, it doesn't show his perspective at all. So he just like disappears for several books and then he comes back, but this shows what actually happened, so it fills in the blanks. And there's 3 stories in this little explanation of his perspective. So there's also Warrior's Refuge, 3 out of 5. Cute side story. They interacted with humans a lot, which you don't see much in the main series. And then the last one was Warrior's Return, 4 out of 5. We see this main character that I loved so much being mean for like the first time, and that was weird. He's usually very loyal and level-headed, but this showed a lot of internal struggle for him. And also the cat that is his like girlfriend. Everybody hates her and I don't understand why because she's so sweet. The illustration illustrations in the manga are very inconsistent. Sometimes they're cute and other times I'm like, what is going on? Why does this cat have the hair of a person? Then I read the next manga, The Rise of Scourge. This was the villain that took out the first villain of the series, my most favorite one. I was never a huge fan of this one because there wasn't much backstory, so I guess this serves as the backstory. 3 out of 5, it was pretty much exactly what I thought it was going to be. It kind of compares him to the main hero of the entire series and how they had similar backstories, but one became a hero and this one became awful. So next I read 3 books about my favorite main villain and his like girlfriend, essentially, who is not in any of the clans, so it's kind of like an outsider's perspective, and it shows how she was manipulated easily because obviously she didn't know what was going on. First one, Into the Woods, was 4 out of 5 stars. It was pretty interesting. Basically, she has to leave to go live in the forest because her owner is really old and has to go to a nursing home. And shit, I think that was like one of the saddest parts of this entire series. And he has to leave her because I guess they don't let cats in that nursing home. And then I googled it because I felt terrible about that, and it turns out a lot of nursing homes do let you take your pets. So everything's fine. Then Escape from the Forest, also about that same cat, 3 out of 5 because it makes me very sad. She couldn't find her owner and she was confused, and it's just like, she was abandoned. It makes me think of what I left for college, and I was like, oh my god, what is my cat thinking right now? Then the third and last one in that arc was Return to the Clans, 3 out of 5 again. It was sad and weird. At the end, she like leaves the forest and you don't really know what happens to her after that. I don't know, it just seemed kind of unfinished, but I don't know, it showed a good backstory of why she fell for Tigerstar's lies, the main villain that I liked. I don't like him, I hate him, but I like love to hate him, you know? He's just the best villain in the entire series. Then the next 3 books in the manga series was about this cat that got driven out by that villain one. 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was okay. This one's kind of cute because he goes and lives with another cat and they're best friends. But also the writer very much says she believes these 2 cats are gay. And the reason they cannot openly talk about that in the books is because they have a huge market in Russia where you cannot have representation of LGBTQ in media aimed at people under 18. Another reason that country is just ruining everything. The next one in that arc was A Clan in Need, 3 out of 5. I wrote it wasn't that interesting. It seemed like a bridge to kind of accelerate the plot between book 1 and 3. And then the last one in that arc is The Heart of a Warrior, 3 out of 5. It was okay. The cat that the one driven out by Tigerstar goes to live with has unexpected family visitors and they're awful. And the illustrations show them to look alike, so I like seeing the actual genetics coming into play, I guess, with these cats. You obviously are not able to see that in the just full-on books that don't have any illustrations. And then the last 3 books I read for the mangas are all about Sky Clan, which lives away from the rest of the clans. They're like really far away, they have their own territory, so it's already kind of boring because there's no other clans to interact with. It's just, they're very isolated. So the first one is The Rescue. I rated it 2 stars. It was just like, there's not much going on. They're just so isolated. There's not that many of them. The leader of the clan struggles because she has children and she's like conflicted between raising her kids and like taking care of the clan. It was kind of boring and predictable and seemed too long for such a short plot, even though it's like 80 pages. Next is Beyond the Code. This one was also 2 out of 5. Not that interesting. It showed a backstory of another villain that was like a decent one. I feel like this villain was modeled after a lot of like dictators and horrible people in history, and Tigerstar wasn't as much. I feel like he was his own thing, but like this villain, Soul is his name. He's giving me Lennon, I'm not gonna lie. So it shows his backstory and how he came to Sky Clan. His backstory was the most interesting part. It also felt kind of like bullshit. It felt like he was lying. Unreliable narrator. I guess I won't spoil it and say whether he actually was lying or not, but it felt like he was. And then there's the last book in this little arc, After the Flood. 3 out of 5. This one was a little bit better than the other 2. I liked the way they portrayed Soul as, I swear to God, he like doesn't have a developed frontal lobe. He has no moral compass. He like genuinely believes the things he's doing are helpful. It's like he just has no sense, while in the main series it seemed like he was very calculated and very manipulative and everything he was doing had a reason, and he kind of like, I guess, couldn't have used the insanity plea. But in this one it's like, what is this cat doing? Like, he's so senseless and he does a lot of really stupid things that end up incriminating him, and it just seems like he should know better. His character just seems kind of inconsistent in these books, but I thought it was more interesting in the manga because it shows someone who's like not right in the head. So yeah, those are all the books I read in July and August. list. This month I definitely have a few books that were sent to me that I need to read. I have like a couple of romances, I think, and one sci-fi book. I want to finish up the Warrior series once and for all. The only ones I have left are very short books, so I'll get to those. You know, it's just gonna be all over the place if I'm being honest with you. I am such a mood reader. Like, I literally was reading this one and had completely different plans to read something else after this, but then I was reminded of these illustrators I loved from my childhood, so I was like, I'm gonna pick up their work again. It's just very all over the place, but I would love to hear what your favorite summer read has been in 2022. If you, like me, also read the Summer I Turned Pretty series for the first time, because that was such a fun experience. And yeah, what are your plans for this fall time? Do you have any books you want to for sure get to before like December? I'm really curious to hear all of that. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any requests for me, please leave them in the comments. If you want to follow me on my Instagram, it is right here. And if you want to follow me on my TikTok, that is right here. I will see you all in a couple days for another video, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye, guys. Run away to an island.